For nearly 5 decades, Graceland stood frozen in time, honoring Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll.
For 48 years, one door at Graceland has never opened for a single visitor. Not a president, not a rock star, not even a member of the Presley family who wasn't already living there. Millions of people have walked through that mansion, stood in the jungle room, stared at the gold records, and paused at Elvis's grave. But every single one of them has looked up that roped-off staircase and wondered the same thing. What is actually up there? And in the last year, a story has spread across the internet claiming that door finally opened, that archivists in white gloves climbed those stairs, and that what they found rewrote everything we thought we knew about Elvis Presley. Before we get into what's really behind that door, you need to know something important. That viral story is not what it seems. And the real explanation is stranger and honestly more human than the myth. Let's start with the house itself, because you can't understand the mystery of the attic without understanding what Graceland actually was to Elvis. In the spring of 1957, a 22-year-old Elvis Presley bought a limestone mansion on the edge of Memphis for $12,500, which works out to roughly $1 million today. He kept the name it already had, Graceland. At first, it was just a house. 14 acres, some barns, horses wandering the property, and for a while, a chimpanzee named Scatter who wore tiny outfits and had a habit of grabbing drinks out of people's hands at parties. Staff used to joke that Scatter was Elvis's wild side let loose, the version of him the cameras never got to see. But Graceland grew into something more complicated than a rich man's playground. In 1964, while the Beatles were taking over American radio, Elvis built himself a meditation garden on the property. Fountains, white columns, quiet flower beds. It wasn't for show. It was where he went to think, to pray, to get away from the noise that never seemed to stop following him. That contrast defines the whole house. The jungle room downstairs has green shag carpet climbing the walls and furniture that looks like it was shipped in from a tiki bar. But 2 rooms over, there's a space built entirely for silence. Elvis was, by every account from people who actually knew him, 2 different men living in the same body, and Graceland was built to hold both of them. Then came August 16, 1977. Elvis died in an upstairs bathroom at Graceland at 42 years old. Within days, close to 100,000 fans lined the streets of Memphis. 17 white Cadillacs led the funeral procession. Priscilla was there. So was his 9-year-old daughter, Lisa Marie. So was his father, Vernon, who by every account never fully recovered from that day. Elvis was buried next to his mother Gladys at a cemetery across town, and it seemed, for a moment, like the family could finally grieve in peace. That peace lasted 2 days. In the middle of the night, a group of men broke into the cemetery and tried to steal Elvis's coffin. They didn't get it, but they damaged the tomb badly enough that the message was unmistakable. Even in death, Elvis wasn't safe from people who wanted a piece of him. Vernon Presley, already devastated, made a decision most fans don't fully appreciate the weight of. He had Elvis and his mother quietly moved and reburied inside the meditation garden at Graceland, the one place on the property built for stillness. And from that point on, Graceland stopped being a home. It became something closer to a fortress. Vernon added alarms, hired round-the-clock security, and shut off the entire second floor to everyone, including tour groups once the house opened to the public in 1982. That's the actual, documented reason the upstairs has stayed closed for almost half a century. Not a hidden discovery. A grieving father who had already watched grave robbers try to dig up his son's body, deciding that the bedroom where Elvis died, and everything near it, would never be turned into a spectacle. Every tour guide at Graceland gives visitors the same line. The upstairs is private, out of respect for the family. For 48 years, that has been true, and there has never been an official announcement from Graceland or Elvis Presley Enterprises saying otherwise. So where did this story about archivists opening the attic in 2025 and finding teddy bears, secret tapes, and unopened fan letters actually come from? Here's the honest answer. If you search for it, you'll find several different versions of this exact same story, published by unrelated-looking websites, and they contradict each other in almost every detail. One version says archivists found boxes labeled by Elvis himself with a teddy bear from his childhood. Another version, published around the same time, claims the real discovery was a stillborn sibling's coffin hidden in the rafters. A third focuses entirely on a mysterious sealed medical file. None of these trace back to a single verifiable source. No statement from Riley Keough, no press release from Graceland, no reporting from an actual news organization that covers Memphis or entertainment. That's not what real historical discoveries look like. That's what content written to get clicks looks like, recycled across different sites with different fabricated details each time. So we're not going to tell you Elvis's teddy bear was found in an attic, because there's no evidence that happened. What we can tell you is the real story, which is honestly stranger than the fake one. Because while that myth was spreading, something did genuinely threaten Graceland in real life, and it had nothing to do with an attic. In the spring of 2024, a company almost nobody had heard of, calling itself Nosny Investments and Private Lending, filed paperwork to auction off Graceland itself. According to the filing, Riley Keough, Elvis's granddaughter, and the only person overseeing his estate since her mother Lisa Marie passed away in 2023, had defaulted on a loan worth close to $4 million, using Graceland as collateral. Fans found out about this practically overnight, and panic spread through Elvis's fanbase within hours. Riley Keough's legal team moved fast. They filed an emergency request in a Tennessee court to block the sale, arguing the entire thing was fraudulent. Their claim was direct. Riley had never signed any loan agreement with this company, and the signatures on the documents appeared to be forged. The clock was running, though, because the auction date was already locked in, and if the court didn't intervene in time, one of the most visited private homes in America would have gone to the highest bidder, sight unseen, based on paperwork nobody could verify. One day before the scheduled auction, a Tennessee judge stepped in and stopped the sale, calling Graceland a one-of-a-kind cultural asset and ruling that losing it would cause real public harm. Tellingly, nobody from Nosny Investments even showed up to argue their side in court. The judge's ruling went through unopposed, and Graceland stayed exactly where it belonged, in the hands of the Presley family. That's a real, documented, court-verified story about Graceland almost slipping away, and it's arguably more dramatic than any attic full of props could ever be, because the threat wasn't sentimental, it was financial and criminal. Now, Graceland has always attracted this kind of strange energy, and honestly, that's part of why the fake attic story spread so easily. Since 1977, Elvis has been the subject of one of the most persistent celebrity myths in American history, the belief that he never actually died. It started almost immediately. A man calling himself John Burroughs, which happened to be an alias Elvis genuinely used when he traveled, supposedly bought a one-way ticket out of Memphis the same night Elvis died. 2 weeks later, a woman in Michigan swore Elvis served her at a Burger King and asked if she wanted extra cheese. By 1979, there were reports of him pumping gas in Oklahoma and shopping for groceries in Missouri. The tabloid weekly World News eventually created a running feature called Elvis Watch just to keep up with the sightings. People who believe these theories usually point to the same handful of details: that his coffin reportedly weighed far more than it should have, that the family chose a closed casket funeral after already holding a public viewing, and most famously, that his middle name is spelled Aaron on his gravestone instead of the Aaron on his birth certificate, which some took as proof the man in that grave wasn't really him. Every one of those details has a mundane explanation, but mundane explanations don't spread the way conspiracy theories do, and that's exactly the same reason a fake attic discovery story spreads faster than the real, quieter truth about why that door has stayed locked. Here's the thing that actually deserves your attention instead of a fabricated teddy bear. Elvis didn't need to die at 42. That part is documented, and it's far more unsettling than anything hidden in a crawl space. His personal physician, Dr. George Nichopoulos, known to almost everyone as Dr. Nick, had been treating Elvis since 1967. In the final 8 months of Elvis's life alone, Dr. Nick wrote prescriptions for more than 10,000 pills. The year before that, it was closer to 19,000. Investigators later found he had written Elvis roughly 195 separate prescriptions in those last 8 months, which comes out to about one every day and a half. Dr. Nick's defense, when Tennessee medical boards eventually came after him, was that Elvis had real, documented health problems, chronic pain from an old injury, glaucoma, and a painful intestinal condition, and that the medications were treating those. But his most striking justification was that he believed he was actually protecting Elvis by controlling what he took instead of letting him get pills from someone with no oversight at all. He was tried in 1980 on charges related to overprescribing, and a jury found him not guilty. It took the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners until 1995, 18 years after Elvis's death, to finally revoke his medical license for good. The official cause of death announced the night Elvis died was cardiac arrhythmia. Natural causes, delivered by the county medical examiner within hours, before any toxicology results existed. When the full report came back later, it showed a heart that had grown enlarged, a liver under serious strain, and levels of multiple powerful prescription medications in his system. Some researchers have since argued Elvis was also dealing with an undiagnosed genetic condition that made him more vulnerable to illness his whole life, which would mean this wasn't purely self-destruction. It was a man whose body was failing him in ways nobody around him fully understood, treated by a doctor who kept the prescriptions coming either out of genuine belief he was helping, or because it was easier than saying no to the most famous man in the world. That's the real mystery of Graceland. Not a hidden room full of movie props, but a house that has spent 48 years protecting the privacy of a man who was falling apart in plain sight while millions of people only ever saw the jumpsuits and the gold records. The locked door upstairs isn't hiding a secret discovery. It's a family's answer to grief they never got to process privately the first time, back when grave robbers tried to dig up his coffin just 2 days after the funeral. Every fake story about teddy bears and sealed tapes is, in its own way, still doing what those grave robbers tried to do, treating Elvis's most private moments as something the public is owed. So the honest answer to what's really behind that door is this. Nobody outside the Presley family and Graceland's staff actually knows, and no credible source has ever said otherwise. What we do know, and what's actually been proven in a courtroom and in medical board records, is more revealing than any viral rumor. A young man from Tupelo built an empire, surrounded himself with people who were supposed to protect him, and died with more prescription drugs in his system than most people will take in a lifetime, while his doctor kept writing him more. His granddaughter had to fight off a fraudulent attempt to auction his home away from his family less than 2 years ago. And decades after his death, people are still inventing stories about what's hidden in his attic, because the truth, that he was just a deeply human person who got sicker and more isolated the more famous he became, isn't as easy to package into a thumbnail as buried treasure. If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing for more deep dives into the real stories behind music history's biggest legends, and let us know in the comments what you'd actually want us to investigate next.